This is a seriously underrated science fiction movie. Only when you see the end will you know the divine reversal of the ending, to create an imaginary world of Mars for the audience. The total investment of the movie is over $250 million. The special effects scenes are still stunning today. The film is a novel setup. That is, if there is another civilization on Mars. John Carter's adaptation of the classic 1917 novel Princess of Mars. It can be said to be the progenitor of all science fiction crossover movies. Even the famous Avatar and Star Wars, they have been inspired by this novel. At the story's beginning, the boy receives a message from his uncle, who wants to meet him, but when he traveled a long way to his uncle's home, he learned that his uncle had died suddenly a few days before. However, the most surprising thing is that he died and buried himself in a tomb that can only be opened from the inside. But the uncle had made a will before he died. He wanted to inherit all the wealth he had unearthed in his life to the boy, and the uncle also left him a special diary. In it, he told a wild legend. The boy's uncle's name was John, and he was a captain in a cavalry regiment. During a battle with the enemy, his team was soon routed. In a panic, John fled to a cave. When he was ready to fight, he didn't expect the enemy to see the cave, but they panicked and left the place. And John, in shock, also went into the cave to find out what had happened. When John came to the innermost part, he saw a strange totem here, and at the top of the cave, there were tons of gold hidden. Just as John was rejoicing, a man suddenly appeared behind him. Seeing the place was exposed, the man immediately grabbed his weapon and tried to kill John. Fortunately, John's skills are extraordinary. He shoots the man with a gun after a struggle. However, when the other side fell, John found he was holding a strange token, and the man's mouth kept repeating a message. The curious John immediately followed the reading out. When John woke up again, he found himself in a strange place. This place is not only bleak, but even the plants are also of a type he has never seen before. John immediately wanted to leave the place, but when he lifted his foot, he suddenly fell to the ground. John tried to get up again, but with a little effort, his body flew forward several meters. At this point, John also finally found that the gravity here seems to be different from the Earth. Then John, after repeated attempts, also gradually mastered the laws of this place. He began to control his body to move. Here, John was like Superman. His speed and strength were greatly enhanced, and he could easily jump several dozen meters with just a slight leap. And after John scurried around for a while, he came to a special building. After he cut through the sand and soil, he found many strange eggs inside, and an unknown creature was hatching from the eggs. At this time, John also finally understood that his place was not the Earth. When John was seriously observing these green creatures, a loud sound suddenly came from the distance. When he looked up, a group of aliens was approaching here quickly. John immediately wanted to leave the place, but at that moment, an alien came from the side. Luckily, John could dodge the attack, but then the enemy troops arrived. They immediately launched a siege on John. Just when John thought he was going to be killed, he didn't expect the aliens to stop his companion's action. It turned out that he had found out that John was different. Then, the aliens tried to communicate with John, but they did not understand each other's language. So, John first imitated the alien speech. When the other party relaxed his guard, he directly had jumped to the weapon. However, before he could attack, the alien shot him in the buttocks from a short distance away. John was captured in this way. Then he was also brought to a large city, but now it looks more like a ruin. There are still a lot of aliens living here. They soon all gathered around. It turns out that they wanted to adopt these green babies. This is also a traditional Thark custom. John was then assigned as a baby to a clan member named Sura. The chief of the clan wanted John to show his bouncing skills, but John showed his displeasure with his actions. Seeing John so disobedient, the clan leader immediately fed him with the other pups. These are the cubs of the alien Thark, but there is a human among them. John was first held down and shaved off his beard. Then he was put into a bath in an unknown liquid. Before John could get over it, a large handful of lime was thrown directly at his face. This is the unique Thark disinfection method. Next, Sura also gave John a mysterious liquid to drink. As the drug took effect, he soon fell asleep. When John woke again, he found green babies lying all over his body. Seeing no Thark guards around, John immediately tried to escape. Unexpectedly, a monster came in. It turned out to be Ola, a hound specializing in guarding the pups. But Ola did not attack. John then relied on his great strength to break free from the chain. However, just as he was about to escape, Ola immediately caught up with, and Ola's speed was unparalleled. No matter how John jumped to escape, Ola could always catch up with him instantly. John had no choice but to hide in the gathering place of the Thark people. Ola rushed in right after him. He yelled at John, but this enraged the Thark. They immediately punched and kicked Ola. John, who wanted to leave, stopped in his tracks. Looking at the beaten Ola, he immediately rushed to stop it, and with his attack, he knocked out a Thark with a single punch. This blow also shocked the Patriarch completely. He didn't expect John to have such great strength. John also found that he could understand the Thark's words, and it seemed that the mysterious liquid had worked. But then, countless Thark people pounced on him. Under their siege, John was quickly knocked to the ground, and he was punished next. But it wasn't John who was punished, but Sura who adopted him. So this is the custom of the Thark people. Children make mistakes, parents are punished. Then, John finally understood why Sura had so many scars on her body. When John felt guilty, the guards suddenly warned them of an enemy attack. The Thark people immediately scattered, and the Patriarch took John into hiding. Soon after, several warships arrived over the city, their technology far superior to that of the Thark. At this time, under the Patriarch's explanation, John also knew the identity of the pursuing parties. It turns out that on this planet, besides the Thark, there is another race of Redskins living on the planet. The Redskins are divided into two powerful camps, one of which is called Zodangan City. Zodangan City has a mechanical castle that can move. They fought and killed and were greedy, plundering the planet of all resources and life. The only one who can compete with them is the city of Helium. They also have a very strong military force. The two sides were always evenly matched, but with an accident, the balance between them was completely broken. A group of people calling themselves the Thurn Gods found King Zodangan, and the Zodangan king used his submission as the price. He exchanged from the hands of the god's ambassador for a horrible weapon called the Ninth Ray. From then on, the city of Helium began to lose. Under the attack of the Ninth Ray, their troops were powerless to fight back. The battleship in the sky now was the Zodangan city chasing after their opponents. The warships in front of them refused to stop. So King Zodangan immediately used the Ninth Ray. Helium City's warship was instantly hit. The Thark people below cheered as they watched the battle. Soon, King Zodangan easily took down the opponent's ships. He then immediately began to check on everyone. It turned out that a princess of Helium was hiding on the ship. Meanwhile, the princess had already sneaked into the other battleship. Just as she tried to escape, the enemy soon found her. A collision between the two ships occurred immediately. With the powerful impact, the princess was also thrown away. The princess was about to fall off the battleship when John, observing the battle, realized that the Helium princess was a human. John saw the situation and immediately rushed up to her. He used his special ability and easily saved the princess with a few jumps. John's action also angered the Zodangan army. They started to rush toward John. However, John did not want to tangle with them. He jumped and flew toward the sky. This scene also stunned the princess. Then John rushed directly into the battleship. Ordinary soldiers were no match for him. John quickly grabbed a cannon and started using the enemy's warship to attack the enemy. Immediately, two battleships were destroyed in Zodangan. The angry Zodangan king immediately tried to use the Ninth Ray, but then the messenger stopped him. He demanded that King Zodangan must capture John alive. Then Zodangan king immediately found John, and the two sides began to fight without saying a word. However, although John had great power, he was unfamiliar with the fighting style here. In the face of Zodangan King's rapid attacks, John was soon disadvantaged. Another area for improvement John was exposed, that John had yet to adapt to the environment here. He was not even in full control of his own body. The Zodangan King was about to kill him when the Thark on the ground attacked. Under the fierce attack of the Thark, a warship of Zodangan City was instantly destroyed. John immediately seized this opportunity and got back to the ground with just a few jumps. As the Thark continued to attack, two more battleships were soon knocked down. King Zodangan knew that this time he was no match for the Thark, and he immediately ordered the ships to start evacuating. All the Thark people recognized John's feat. The Patriarch immediately rushed to John. Since then, John has become the hero of the Thark people. Soon afterward, the princess found John. His powerful jumping ability intrigued the princess. If her people could learn this skill, the city of Helium could be defeated. But then John explained that his ability was not a skill. During their exchange, John learned that this planet was now Mars. This conclusion shocked John to no end. The princess then quietly took John to the temple of the Thark people. In the legends of Mars, the goddess is the creator of all things, and the third messenger is the most faithful devotee of the goddess. He can travel across the planets. Soon they found a clue about the Stargate here, but then the princess made a condition that if she helped John find a way to return to Earth, he must also help Helium City win the war. Just when they reached an agreement, it was not expected that the Thark people would soon find this place. It turns out that the temple is a forbidden place for the Thark people, and John broke in without permission. Now he had to be punished, and Sura, who had adopted him, had to be put in the Colosseum. The patriarch was furious when he heard the news and grabbed a weapon to get rid of John himself. However, when the patriarch came to the tent, he reached out and gagged everyone. Then, he even let John go directly. Turns out that Sura is the patriarch's daughter. Then, the chief gave the token to John. In exchange, he had to take Sura away with him. Soon the general outside also found out that something was wrong, but when he pulled back the curtain, he found the room empty. This immediately gave the general the idea of rebellion. At the same time, John and his group had already embarked on a journey to find the Stargate. Along the way, they saw only endless yellow sand and desolation. Even the once prosperous city has turned into a ruin, and all because of the plundering of Zodangan City. As they continued, the group came to the only river on Mars. Legend has it that at the end of it is the palace of the goddess. John and the group immediately proceeded along the river. When they reached the end, there was a special building. John picked up the princess and jumped straight up. At that moment, the teleportation token on his body also lit up. Then the building under their feet. As if by some induction, a road soon appeared in front of them. They immediately followed the passage into the interior of the temple. At this time, the princess also discovered that the strange phenomenon in front of them was not a miracle but an unknown technology they could not understand yet. As the princess placed the token on the ground, a blue light instantly erupted under their feet. Then a star map also immediately appeared. After a moment of observation, John stepped directly on the light representing Mars. Unexpectedly, the star map on the ground also changed. Several lines of light spread out from Mars to connect all the planets, and next to the line with the Earth also appeared a special text. In the princess's translation, John also understood one thing. He is not the original body that came to this planet. His body is now more like a clone. However, before they could continue their research, there was a loud noise outside the temple. When they came outside, they found that the Thark's archenemy Wahoo had surrounded the place, and the person behind all this is the third messenger. John saw this and immediately returned to the ship with the princess in his arms. Now they had to get out of there as soon as possible. Countless Wahoo began to chase them along the river. Soon they caught up with John, who had already fled to land. Seeing the raging pursuit behind him, John knew that no one could escape, so he asked Sura to take the princess and leave first. He stayed behind to keep the enemy at bay. Looking at the approaching pursuers behind him, John rushed forward without fear. Wahoo's team was immediately in chaos. John's strength was beyond everyone's expectations. Every attack he made was powerful, and the hound Sura also attracted the attention of the enemy. With the cooperation of one man and one dog, they held the enemy in check, but the Wahoo around them was endless. Under their siege, John's hands, constantly wielding the knife, gradually ran out of strength. Just when they were about to kill John, a warship suddenly arrived here. This is the crushing of the higher civilization against the lower society. Under the bombardment of artillery fire, even if the Wahoo had an extremely powerful body, they could only take a beating, and soon the Wahoo was defeated. At this time, the warship in the sky was revealed in its full glory. It was a warship from Helium City. The princess saw this and immediately ran over to it. The king also rushed out to hug his daughter. Fortunately, Helium City's support came in time, and John was only temporarily unconscious. However, the princess was relieved when King Zodangan came down from the battleship. The princess immediately grabbed her weapon and rushed forward, but the king stopped her. It turns out that the Zodangan king has made a condition. As long as the princess is willing to marry him, then he can stop the war, and the king had no choice but to agree to this condition for the safety of his people. When John woke up again, he also came to Zodangan City together. Soon a guard came in, and it turned out that the princess sent him to meet John. Then John used his jumping ability. He went straight to the princess' residence. After the princess dismissed all the servants, she also told John she was about to marry. The princess expected John to say something, but John hesitated and then chose to be silent. The princess didn't say anything when she saw this. From John's eyes, she already knew the answer. Then the princess returned the token to John and told him the spell to return to Earth. However, when the magic came to the last sentence, King Zodangan suddenly broke in. The princess immediately looked back. but John had already disappeared. The princess was instantly sad. Looking at the empty room, she felt lonely for the first time. However, John did not recite the last incantation, he just quietly hit on the beam. During this time together, John had fallen in love with the princess. When he was about to stay and help the princess, a witch was waiting for him outside the door. The control of his body immediately immobilized John. Then the witch's face also changed, and he turned out to be the hidden third messengers. And in the next conversation, the messenger knew that John came from Earth. He mastered the ability to travel across the planet. Then the messenger also said the mission of the Thurn people. It turns out that the Thurn are born to live forever, and they don't know how to spend their long lives. So they start wars and rewrite the planet's history. Mars is just a playground for them. In their plan, if only the Zodangan king and the princess could marry, then the Zodangan king's rule would become more reasonable. However, John's unexpected appearance interfered with this plan. The next step was to take John out of the castle and execute him. Then the messenger also used various strange abilities. Not only can they change their appearance at will, but they can also use the ninth ray to control the bodies of their enemies. However, just as the messenger were about to transport John away, Ola the hound suddenly appeared. The messenger was caught unawares and was pounced on by Ola, and John immediately regained control of his body. John then directly snatched the Divine Ambassador's token. Then he rode the flying machine and prepared to escape from there. However, this was John's first time flying a flying machine, so he had to feel his way around while rushing, and Ola followed him with its terrifying speed. With John's continued attempts, he steered the craft out of the castle, but at that moment, there were already pursuers behind him. They were about to shoot, but the pursuer was shot first and fell to the ground. It turns out that Sura was already here to meet them, and they immediately returned to the Thark's territory. Now John had to convince the clan chief to help Helium City. However, when he entered the tent, he found that the general had already started a rebellion to take control of the Thark clan, and the general has always been upset with John. He immediately threw John and the chief into the Colosseum together, and the general was now looking down on them. Next, just let the monsters tear them to pieces, then no one will be able to challenge his position. This is the most powerful monster on Mars, the eyeless white apes. It is not only powerful but also has an uncanny sense of smell. The monster soon found John's position, then White Apes sent them all flying with a savage charge. The Patriarch, who was already injured, could not get up as White Apes continued to approach. Fortunately, John hurriedly used the chain to create a sound, temporarily distracting the monster's attention. John wanted to jump up and dodge White Ape's attack, but the chains on his feet restricted his movement. John immediately tried to rip off the chain, but he found it strong after trying, and the general also lost patience at this point. He directly ordered his men to release another White Apes. After a brief exchange between the two monsters, they immediately separated and rushed to the target. Sura jumped into the arena with one of his enemies when he saw his father in danger. The Thark had not yet reacted and was directly torn in half by White Apes. And John's side also trapped the monster with chains. With White Apes' powerful strength, John's captivity chains were finally freed. Then John immediately climbed up. He used his great strength to swing the stone. With his powerful strike, a White Ape was immediately knocked to the ground. At that moment, another White Ape was still chasing after Sura. John saw this and immediately rushed to support him. Sura also hurriedly threw a weapon to match John's attack. Seeing that the two White Apes were not responding, the general finally got nervous. Then, in the eyes of everyone, John came out of the White Apes' corpses. The Thark people who saw this scene immediately raised their arms and shouted, "This is their most powerful warrior." And then John challenged the general. For the Thark, a coward who does not dare to accept the challenge is not worthy of leading the race. The general had no choice but to fight, but he was no match for John. John chopped off the general's head in just one move. John then immediately brought the Thark to support the princess, and the huge army went straight to Zodangan City. However, when they broke through the walls, they found that Zodangan was now an empty city. It turned out that the Thurn messenger had been prepared for this, and he had already changed the place of the wedding to Helium City. After the Patriarch lectured John, he decided to go to Helium by himself, while the rest of the Thark people took the warship to support him. By the time John arrived at Helium, the princess's wedding had reached a critical moment. John rushed in with his flying machine, and then he revealed the plot of the Zodangan king. Seeing that the plan had been exposed, the Thurn envoy had the Zodangan king give the order to attack. Immediately, the soldiers of the two tribes engaged in a melee. At this time, the the Zodangan army station outside also received the signal, and countless soldiers began to charge toward the city of Helium. The defenseless Helium people were no match for the Zodangan attack, and they were soon overwhelmed by the Zodangan attack. Later, the Zodangan king also found John alone. The Zodangan king wanted to cut him into pieces for repeatedly ruining his plans. However, just as he was about to kill John, a warship burst into the castle. The Thark reinforcements arrived just in time and immediately attacked the Zodangans. With the combined efforts of the Thark and Helium, the Zodangan city was finally no match for them, and their soldiers soon began to scatter and flee. Meanwhile, John finally captured the Zodangan king alive. Just when he wanted to ask more information about the Thurn chose to kill him first, and he turned into John's appearance to cheat the token. Fortunately, John found in time to rush up, but until the end they did not catch the Thurn messenger. However, with the final victory of Helium City, Thurn's plan was also destroyed. Then John also made his feelings known to the princess, and they were officially married in the presence of their clan. John threw away the token that allowed him to teleport back to Earth, as he had already found a home on Mars. However, just as he was about to return to the palace, a soldier suddenly attacked him. It turns out that this soldier is also Thurn messenger turned into. John's consciousness was instantly transported back to Earth. When he woke again, he found his body on Earth was already stiff, but John did not have time to pay attention to this. He immediately struggled to crawl to the teleportation platform, but now, he did not have the teleportation token in his hand. No matter how he recited the incantation, the stone platform did not respond. When John left the cave, he looked up at Mars, which was 225 million kilometers away. At this time, John also remembered one thing. Since Thurn knew so much about Earth's culture, he could find teleportation tokens elsewhere. So for the next 10 years, John started digging around for relics. He pursued all kinds of ancient legends and prophecies to find a little clue about the Thurn people. Sure enough, with John's constant search, he finally got a token again. Then John immediately returned to the castle with the token. It turns out that John had found out that Thurn people on Earth had been watching him. So John found his most trusted nephew to inherit the legacy, and he recorded his story in the notes. When the nephew finally understands the truth, it turns out that the uncle is afraid that there are Thurn people who will come to destroy his body. So the nephew immediately ran to John's grave. He now had to confirm the safety of his uncle's body. As he used the method left by John to activate the switch, the solid wooden door was finally opened. However, at that moment, a figure raised a dagger behind him, and there was nobody in the tomb. Just when they were shocked, a gunshot suddenly came from behind them, and the person who fired was John. It turns out that he did not find the token at all, and his premature death was also a fake death created by using tetrodotoxin. When the Thurn followed John, he deliberately set up this trap, because he knew there would be a teleportation token on the Thurn. Seeing that his plan was complete, John officially said goodbye to his nephew this time. Next, he will become a real gravekeeper, and it was time for John to go home.
All soon.